All right, here we are. We are into early September. I'm Tom Novak. This is your Solenis and Novak weather 30-day outlook now for the month of September. Now, thank you for joining me, by the way. Of course, we like to look back into August real quickly just to see what has happened over the last 30 days. And here's the precipitation now. Anomalies, the departures from normal for the month of August. Just a couple things I want to point out is look at how wet it has been out in the western 1/3 or so of the United States. Of course, they had some tropical moisture of all things that flowed north into California, Nevada, and a good chunk of the western U.S., and that's why they've been much wetter than normal there. But look at the dry air over Texas and Louisiana, the southern plains, and into portions of the western Mississippi River Valley have been really dry, and that is also the case over the portions of the upper Midwest and western Great Lakes regions. So yes, areas that desperately need precipitation now have not been getting it here lately, and hopefully that will change here in September, but I'm not that optimistic for that. Here are the temperatures over the last 30 days, the departures from normal, and temperatures were a good 5 to 10 degrees, if not more, above the average from Kansas and Oklahoma and New Mexico on east through Texas and Louisiana. So it's been hot down here, intense heat down there. Meanwhile, the northeastern sections of the United States, the New England, portions of the eastern Corn Belt, a little bit cooler than the average. And of course, with the precipitation out west, which is really weird for this time of the year, but precipitation and clouds out west have kept them relatively cool. Northwestern U.S., yes, it's been hot there, and they need rain. And the good news is I think that they're going to get some here as we go into and go through September. Here are the precipitation amounts now, departures from normal over the last 7 days now. This is the first week of September, and look, the wet weather continues out west from the Dakotas, the western Dakotas on west through a good section of the Rocky Mountains, northern Rocky Mountains, and into California, Nevada. Just weird weather out there with rain, torrential rains at times over portions of the Intermountain West and even into Northern California and Oregon. Meanwhile, it's been dry up in the northwestern U.S. And look at this massive area of below normal precipitation for this first week or so of September over basically the eastern 2/3 of the United States. And I think that trend, for the most part now, is going to continue into September, which is not good news, especially for the drought-stricken areas of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska. We have, and you can see the legend down here, we have extreme and even exceptional drought in portions of the northern and central sections of the U.S. And of course, like we had mentioned, New Mexico, Texas, portions of Oklahoma, Louisiana, really, really dry in those areas of the United States. They need rain. I'm just not that optimistic. We'll see if it happens, but I'm not that optimistic for rain in that section of the United States. When we look at the 500 millibar heights or height anomalies in the United States, of course, we look for red areas, which are building ridges or expanding atmosphere, and then blue areas, which are shrinking or contracting areas of the atmosphere, which are troughs in the atmosphere. You can see what the European computer model guidance shows. It's got this pretty significant ridge that continues to be anchored in place over the central United States and portions of the Rocky Mountains. Meanwhile, we finally get a bit of a trough here to develop over the eastern U.S. So the heat's going to, at least the real intense heat, is going to come to an end over the eastern sections of the U.S. Meanwhile, as we get into this third week or so of September, the European computer model guidance is trying to build a ridge once again over much of, or the heart of the United States. And I think that's going to continue as we go through the last week or so of September with a ridge that will probably intensify or build even further over the heart of the United States, which means warm air, I think, is going to continue to dominate much of the United States. All right, the jet stream, the river of air at 30 to 35,000 feet. It's important that we look at this because these are the steering winds. And as we get into the middle portions of September now, the European computer model guidance shows that that jet stream pattern is going to stay in place, where it's going to come into the northwestern sections of the U.S. and then head east and northeast into southern Canada. And that keeps the storm track, for the most part, over this section of the United States and southern Canada. Meanwhile, yes, good news for those of you that are tired of the heat out east. This weak trough out there is going to at least temper the heat in that section of the United States. Meanwhile, I just don't have much in the way of good news for the southern U.S. as ridge continues to be in place over the southern portions of the Rockies and into the southern and portions of Central Plains. So I think the heat is going to continue down there with only maybe occasional or sporadic relief, at least fronts moving through that area of the United States. But I'm just not that confident that we're going to get relief over the southern and central sections of the United States. The 30-day outlook for temperatures across the United States, like I had mentioned, I'm expecting the heat for the most part to stay in place from the central and southern Rockies on east into the Central Plains and perhaps even further east into the Corn Belt of the United States. Meanwhile, where the jet stream, an active jet stream, is out in the northwestern sections of the U.S., into portions of the northern U.S., temperatures will remain near or below normal in those areas. Meanwhile, precipitation is concerned. When we look at that, much of the northwestern 1/3 or so of the United States will likely be and experience above average precipitation. And yes, much above average precipitation in Nevada. Well, that has already happened, but it likely will continue here as we go through September. Meanwhile, where the high pressure system is anchored over the heart of the United States, that's where we are going to have a real tough time generating precipitation, or at least consistent precipitation, which would be drought busting type precipitation is not likely over the central and southern plains and portions of the Midwest, as that jet stream stays further north than what is usual for early fall. Now, looking at the drought index map, we saw this before, but I'm expecting increasing drought conditions from the central and southern Rockies on east through the southern plains and into portions of the Midwest. Yes, and drought will start to increase over the eastern sections of the U.S., but they have plenty of soil moisture there right now. So I'm not too concerned about drought in the eastern sections of the U.S. Meanwhile, where they really need rain, out in the northwestern sections of the U.S., I think you're going to get some, which is good news, while the rest of the western sections of the U.S. are going to stay wet, or at least unusually wet for this time of year. All right, that is your 30-day outlook for September from Solenis and Novak Weather. Thank you for joining me. Have a great September.